Hello, everyone. This is Christina Barr. You're watching Black Tea News. Hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I am your host, Christina Barr, and today we are going to be talking about Mitt Romney versus Tulsi Gabbard because Tulsi said something he didn't like over the weekend, and it seems undoubtedly true, but he called her a traitor. Like her or hate her, or like him and hate him. It seems like really strange to press that far and to say something like that about someone else. Who, she served in Congress, she ran for president, she served in the military. And I'm not saying that makes you absolved of possibly being a traitor, but just simply pointing out facts that he doesn't like for some reason isn't what makes you a traitor. So we're going to go through his beef a little bit because it seems a little hysterical to me, like not hysterical like funny, though you may find it entertaining and chuckle a bit, but hysterical like, why would you even say that? So we'll give you a rundown on that. Some of these, I guess as you would call them, neocons, have been a little bit wilding out a bit. I think on Friday we talked about Adam Kinzinger and how he trashed a UFC fighter for saying he didn't want to fight in Ukraine, but he would fight and die in Arkansas. And basically, like, even like, we don't need you. There's other brave people even in Arkansas. I'm like, what does that mean? Like, that's so degrading. But we talked about him, so now today we're going to spend our time talking about Mitt Romney. Also, Kyrie Irving, who's a basketball player who would not get vaccinated, who was like playing in some places, but obviously not other places, even though other people on the team who were vaccinated got COVID, etc. It seems silly after all this time to still have those mandates in place. I didn't really realize that was still a thing. I'm not a big basketball player. I mean, obviously not a player, but follower. But he went to a game that he can't play in. So people are like, this is madness. This is crazy. So we're talking about that a little bit today. And also Kim Foxx, who, if she had done an appropriate job, she could have handled the Jussie Smollett case, but she didn't. So they had to can her and they got somebody else and he got convicted, but she dropped like 16 charges that were originally on him and people thought that was shady. So they looked into it again. And of course, he got convicted for 150 days in jail. And she thinks that's a miscarriage of justice and that he's being made an example of. And honey, you just need to sit all the way down. So we're going to talk about all those things today. But before we jump into it, I do want to thank Bright Michigan Pack. I am here in their studio today, and I do enjoy being in their studio. As always, if I say something today that triggers you, I do not care. They do not care. There is no one really to complain to. You're in my domain, I'm afraid. But they do enjoy uplifting conservative voices, so I am grateful to be broadcasting here. So I appreciate them always. But if I upset you, you got to just buy a black tea mug and cry your tears in there. Please visit blacktnews.com. Check out different articles that I have on the website. You guys can also check out different merch, like I'm wearing the GOAT hoodie, and that is for greatest of all time. To get a closer look, there it is. We do have the hoodie in different colors, and black and red and dark blue and so on. We do also have them in t-shirts, so you guys can check those out at the site. We got this I voted for Trump and all I got was historic peace deals, gas under $2, no new wars in this lousy t-shirt. So as people are having a lot of conversations about gas prices right now, that'd be a good shirt to have. I saw some people on Facebook say, and then maybe it was Twitter, saying that Republicans should be signing up people to vote, registering them to vote at gas stations. And I'm like, that's pretty interesting, though it is private property, and I wouldn't recommend really doing that because someone would probably kick you out. I guess you can press your luck, or if you can talk to someone who owns that gas station, I guess, and see how it goes down. But people are really getting upset about the gas prices. Now, Biden, them of course, is shifting the blame and saying, hey, it's Putin. And I saw someone, I think it was leftist libs of TikTok who posted this on their Twitter page, and they said I wanted to check in on the libs, see how they're doing. So someone pointed to a gas, price, and they're like, it was like $7, but it was like the highest at premium, and he was like, "See what you've done, Putin! See what you've done!" And so, they've, of course, the war has made prices jump dramatically, like a full dollar, I think, at least where around where I am, but it was going high before, and we could have put some other measures in place to try to brace for impact, and Biden has openly talked about destroying the fossil fuel industry, and I don't know what you else you people want. I can't help with your delusions, and it's so funny. I released a video over the weekend, with the song "Get Low," talking about gas prices and mocking Biden, and she's been playing clips of them talking about that. And at the end, Kamala says, "You get what you asked for," or whatever. So it was a good video, but there's people who are saying, "Oh my gosh, the president doesn't affect gas prices," and I'm like, you guys, just stop. And I read a little bit of a Washington Post, I think it was. No, I think it was Wall Street Journal did an opinion piece just explaining, like, okay, the Biden administration, they're lying to everyone, and they clearly don't understand how this works. And they, talked about the different leases and how hard it is actually to get that stuff done. That not every situation actually leads to where there's actually oil when you get the permits or whatever. You have to have stuff to finance it, and they're holding up a lot of different red. There's a lot of red tape that the Biden administration is not being honest about, as Jen Psaki just lies through her teeth at the podium. So I did share that article. So be informed. Be informed as you talk to these people, and also got stuff like "I'm not the victim you're looking for," and so on. So just check out stuff. I got the website. If you enjoy what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate. I do have a funny for the day. This is from George Alexopoulos. You guys know how much I like George's comics. Someone's filling up the car, electric vehicle. It looks suspiciously, maybe sort of like Kamala Harris. And I say that probably because all the laughing at the end. But you can see that it takes a lot to power these vehicles. So a lot of people really, really believe that if you get an electric car, you'll be good. And that's all that you sort of need. Actually, there's a video, I guess, of Granholm, who's energy secretary. I know her as my former governor who presided over the lost decade. Every time I tell people that, like, she was like the governor during the lost decade, and they're just like, they just kind of lay back and like, start groaning, like, how could someone let this happen? And in government, hey, so there's people who like to let you fail upwards, and she failed upwards, and she did have some compromising sort of interest with her investments into some like green energy, new electric cars and stuff like that. So there's some issues. There's some issues there, but she's like, just get an electric car, and I think Pete Buttigieg said something along those lines as well. So this isn't kind of new. Like we felt like that way in the Obama administration, where they wanted to make things so expensive that you would go that way. But people will make that shift if it makes sense, if that's what the market demands. But if you're trying to just push people into what they cannot afford, and instead of making an alternative that just naturally is better, then we're going to run into a really big problem. Like, you don't play like PS1s and 2s, and like people go buy alternatives, right? Because there's a better product out there, and a lot of people will go when those prices jump down. Sometimes they'll get them if they'll save up for them if that demand is there. Or a better example would be like, we don't have VCR so much anymore. Like we have alternatives, right? With the DVD players. People don't even have DVD players anymore. People just watch stuff digitally. But there's different alternatives that will come along when they financially make a lot of sense. Other stuff phases out, or when there's the product. Sometimes even when it's expensive, it will still phase it out, because DVD players used to be a lot more expensive when they first came out and stuff. I think my dad started buying that stuff when maybe Gladiator maybe came out. Maybe it was a big movie or something that we really enjoyed. And he's like, I'm gonna get a DVD player. He got the DVD player. And then we had a bunch of DVD players. years. And then one day VCRs, they had dual VCRs and they had DVD players. I think we maybe still have maybe one of those at my house, but then eventually those things became like hard to find. And now like your computers may not even have a disk drive. This computer that I have, it's pretty big, but it does not have, it's a 17-inch laptop and it doesn't have a disk drive. And I used to sell computers and people be like, there's no disk drive on this laptop. And I'm like, what do you need one for? And they would ponder and then they'd realize they really in most cases don't need one anymore. And if you need one, you can go get one that's like $20, or if even that anymore, that's like a one that you can plug into a USB and it's just like an extension thing. Technology is a really wonderful thing, and people will go that route with electric cars if it starts to make sense. But just trying to force people out of their normal vehicles is not in any way a good plan. And I hope they find that out at the ballot box. I really hope they do, but it's just really unwise. Like if the gas is expensive, but if something goes down in your electric car and you have to replace a part that's like $10,000 or something like that, that just some Americans be like, you know what, I just got to go get a new car. Having that kind of money to replace that sort of part, that is, and then you also have parts that would be hard to find, so we're just not there yet. Even Elon Musk, who makes electric cars, is like, I need to drill or something. He's like, I hate to say it, but y'all got to do something else. So ran home and Buttigieg being all like, go get yourself an electric car. That is just not an option right now for a lot of people. It's just not. So I always like George Alexopoulos. If you guys do not follow him on Twitter, go ahead and follow him on Twitter. I do have an interview with him that I filmed sometime last year, maybe around this time, that you guys can check out on my YouTube page. He's a pretty interesting guy. So anyway, let's get to this Tulsi Gabbard, Mitt Romney situation. So I did do a little TikTok about it. So some of you may be aware of the initial tweet of him calling her a traitor. So I guess I will start off playing Tulsi's video first and then go into why he called her a traitor. Pretty fascinating stuff. Again, what she's going to be talking about is not something that seems to be untrue.
Here are the undeniable facts. There are 25 to 30 U.S.-funded biolabs in Ukraine. According to the U.S. government, these biolabs are conducting research on dangerous pathogens. Ukraine is in an active war zone with widespread bombing, artillery, and shelling, and these facilities, even in the best of circumstances, could easily be compromised and release these deadly pathogens. Now, like COVID, these pathogens know no borders. If they are inadvertently or purposely breached or compromised, they will quickly spread all throughout Europe, the United States, and the rest of the world, causing untold suffering and death. So in order to protect the American people, the people of Europe, the people around the world, these labs need to be shut down immediately, and the pathogens that they hold need to be destroyed. Instead of trying to cover this up, the Biden-Harris administration needs to work with Russia, Ukraine, NATO, the UN to immediately implement a ceasefire for all military action in the vicinity of these labs until they're secured and these pathogens are destroyed. Now, in addition to all this, the US funds around 300 biolabs around the world who are engaging in dangerous research, including gain of function, similar to the lab in Wuhan, where COVID-19 may have originated from. Now, after realizing how dangerous and vulnerable these labs are, they should have all been shut down 2 years ago, but they haven't. Now, this is not a partisan political issue. The administration and Congress need to act now for the health and well-being of every American and every person on this planet.
So that's the video that she put out. Now, well, quickly, someone asked me to repeat the Twitter name. This isn't my Twitter name. This is the comic book of the guy, the comic I showed. His Twitter name is actually G Prime 85. G-Prime85. That's his Twitter handle. His name is George Alexopoulos. So he's a comic book artist, and I often show his comic art. If he has a new one, I normally will show it on the program, unless it's like a little too edgy. But I do really enjoy his stuff. My Twitter handle is at True Black Tea. True Black Tea. That's my Twitter. It's the only one that's different than my actual handle. So anyway, back to this Tulsi situation. You are welcome. You are welcome in the comments. So it's pretty bizarre that was what warranted Mitt Romney tweeting out that she was a traitor. And that he said Tulsi Gabbard is promoting false Russian propaganda. Her treasonous lies may well cost lives. So a lot of people were like, how? Please say specifically. Now, just a little FYI, there's a lot of people you should not trust all this stuff. I'm not saying you should go out on a limb and trust Tulsi. I'm not saying that you should trust Tucker. I'm not saying you should trust Mitt. I'm not saying you should trust Ukraine. I'm not saying you should trust Russia. I'm saying you should take everything that you hear about the situation with a grain of salt. And you can even put me in that category if you really feel that way. I try to be very careful with what I say, but I talked about on Friday how people had all this stuff coming out at first that was just untrue. And like the Ghost of Kiev story, my sister told me like a origin story that sounded like a comic book or something, like a full feature film, and it wasn't true. There was there's several compilation videos of like different misinformation that's come out with this war. I started to kind of draw back a little bit on some of the stuff coming out when they were showing all these different pictures of people who were like, oh, we're going to war together, etc. And I'm like, oh, that's, fight for your nation. That's cool. You guys do what you need to do. And then I saw one that was like a beauty pageant person. And I don't know what it was about it that started to rub me the wrong way. But I'm like, you know what? Seems too much like an Instagram war. And I know there's real stuff going on, but I didn't like the way it was being presented to me. And then that was one of the things that wasn't true, because that beauty person, she did not join the military and she was holding an airsoft gun. So I'm like, there's people out here really dying. And I'm just like, you can show support or whatever, but I don't like the propaganda. I don't like being emotionally manipulated. So that's where I just like, I'm going to take a lot of this with a grain of salt and be careful. And something else that's really disturbing that I found out toward the end of last week was that the White House is recruiting TikTok stars and briefing them on Ukraine so they can give out, I guess, accurate information. And there might be one or two of them that that's been talking about it, that, it would be fine to tell them some of this stuff. But there's one particular person named Victoria Hammett, and there's a couple different people that is like, but she's someone who is so big with the propaganda. It's ridiculous. Very, very far left, totally dishonest to the point where maybe I would even go as far to say disingenuous with her arguments. And I would have not in a million years invited her to the White House if I was in the White House looking at some of this stuff. But she says a big channel. She gets a lot of play. Even when people reply to her, it's a lot of play. That's just how the algorithm works out. So, like when I reply to her, I've always like trigger warning for my followers, because they're like, oh my gosh, this girl again. So, it's amazing that the White House would be like, yeah, let's recruit TikTok stars to spread this information. And I don't necessarily know why. Is it because because there's the app skews so young. So I question, why do you want so many young people to be engaged with that sort of information, but you don't, you want good information to go out there. But it just seems like a game. It just seems like a game. When you're recruiting people like that, it's about influence, I think, rather than information. And then one of the things that Jen mentioned when she was briefing them, she mentioned how Russia hacked the elections in 2016. So she's giving out misinformation while she's trying to inform them about, so they cannot give out misinformation. So I don't know what all she told these people, but that's not a good look to me. That comes off as very icky to me. Very, very icky, especially with some of the accounts that they reached out to. So anyway, be very, very careful about some of the stuff that you hear. But anyway, Mitt Romney called her said her treasonous lies may well cost lives. Now, people have been and will continue ragging on Tulsi Gabbard and some of her stances, some of her positions. But people were really going in for Mitt Romney for that comment. And like Mike Cernovich and Grinwald, I can't think of his first name, is escaping me at the moment, but they were pointing fun at the fact that he's someone who didn't serve, like Inam, for example. She did serve, but he's more hawkish and she's more anti-war. So she's put herself on the line and he hasn't. And he also has 5 sons that also have not served. And that actually came up during the campaign trail in 2012. And Glenn Greenwald is his name. And he pointed out back then, like flashing back in that time, he's like, they haven't served because they've been, helping me get elected or something. And that's, and there were articles and stuff about that. And that rubbed people the wrong way. And I'm not saying that has to be, you can't serve unless you have served or your family has served. I'm just saying that's what people are saying about Mitt Romney right now. But people do think that is an extra notch in your belt if you actually have put your life on the line. And someone said my pick is covering my face. My mic? They meant my mic is covering my face. But Mitt Romney, he's getting roasted for this. He's getting roasted. So Tulsi actually did go ahead and reply to Mitt Romney. So I want to go ahead and read some of her replies. I only have like a photo of the tops, but I'm going to read her whole entire thread. Mitt Romney, you've called me a treasonous liar for stating the fact that there are 25 plus U.S. funded biolabs in Ukraine, which, if breached, would release and spread deadly pathogens to the U.S. world, and therefore must be secured in order to prevent new pandemics. Bizarrely, you claim that securing these labs, or even calling for securing these labs, is treasonous and will lead to a loss of life, when the exact opposite is obviously true. The spread of pathogens is what will cause the loss of life, not the prevention of such spread. Senator Romney, please provide evidence that what I said is untrue and treasonous. If you cannot, you should do the honorable thing, apologize, and resign from the Senate. So I that's what I said on a video. I'm like, that unless he's like has some intel where that he has about her being a traitor, they should obviously boot her from service and then go arrest her. But just saying that about it's like, do you guys remember when Hillary Clinton said that the Russians were grooming Tulsi Gabbard for for the presidency? I don't know if she said specifically Tulsi, but it was obviously who she was talking about. Maybe she did. I'm thinking about like another time when it wasn't specific, but she was definitely talking about Tulsi Gabbard. And she decided to make her target for whatever reason. Maybe because, I don't know, she kind of seemed like a sort of fresh blood, obvious pick to a lot of people from my side of the aisle. Thought Tulsi was the obvious pick that people should have went with. But hey, Joe Biden is president. Look how that's working out right now. Don't get me wrong, I wouldn't have voted for Tulsi, but people were baffled about how things turned out as far as the picks. Totally baffled. And I assume people say that about 2016, but hey, that was actually their strategy to have Trump be the nominee because they thought Hillary could beat him. So that's on them too in 2016. But it's so many people hate Joe Biden. Like, well, we had to vote for him because he was against Trump. It's like you guys didn't have a primary though. You guys had a primary with a lot of different people in it, and you ended up with Joe Biden. So that's pretty amazing. Pretty amazing. So it's just bizarre, I think, that the Mitt Romney would say that. So let's go on. Evidence of the existence of such biolabs, their vulnerability, and thus need to take immediate action to secure them is beyond dispute. Number one, State Department's Victoria Nuland acknowledged that such labs containing dangerous pathogens exist in Ukraine in her testimony to the U.S. Senate March 8, 2022. Ukraine has biological research facilities, which in fact we are quite concerned that Russian troops may be seeking to gain control of. We are working with the Ukrainians on how they can prevent any of those research materials from falling into the hands of Russian forces should they approach. So Tulsi, she brought some receipts. She brought some receipts. So I'm going to go ahead and play one of the videos which she is referring to.
Well, I only have a minute left. Let me ask you, does Ukraine have chemical or biological weapons?
Ukraine has biological research facilities, which, in fact, we are now quite concerned Russian troops, Russian forces may be seeking to gain control of. So we are working with the Ukrainians on how they can prevent any of those research materials from falling into the hands of Russian forces should they approach.
I'm sure you're aware that the Russian propaganda groups are already putting out there all kinds of information about how they've uncovered a plot by the Ukrainians to release biological weapons in the country and with NATO's coordination. If there's a biological or chemical weapon incident or attack inside of Ukraine, is there any doubt in your mind that 100% it would be the Russians that would be behind it?
There is no doubt in my mind, Senator, and it is classic Russian technique to blame on the other guy what they're planning to do themselves.
So Tulsi's video didn't say that Ukrainians had bioweapon labs. They just said they were biolabs. So I don't know if Mitt Romney just jumped the gun because he doesn't like her, or he didn't listen with his feelings rather than his ears. But she did confirm that there are biolabs, right? So that's what she said. So Tulsi went on. Number two, Pentagon fact sheet, March 11, 2022, has numerous statements directly and indirectly confirming the existence of such biolabs. And she had a link there in her thread. The United States, through BTRP, has investigated approximately 200 million in Ukraine since 2005, supporting 46 Ukrainian laboratories, health facilities, and diagnostic sites. Number three, CBS Face the Nation, March 13, 2022. Correspondent David Martin said a Pentagon official told him that they're concerned about the existence of such biolabs in Ukraine. The concern is that the Russians will seize one of these biomedical research facilities that Ukraine has, where they do research on deadly pathogens like botulism, anthrax, seize one of those facilities, weaponize the pathogen, and then blame it on Ukraine and U.S. because the U.S. has been providing support for some of the research being done in one of those facilities. And I do have that clip as well.
Russia, though, is willing to use munitions that have been banned under international law. We know that. We heard President Biden warn about chemical weapons use. Are we seeing movement of those kind of weapons into Ukraine?
A Pentagon official I talked to this morning said there is no movement of chemical weapons into Ukraine. At least they're not seeing the signs of it. The concern is that the Russians will seize one of these biomedical research facilities that Ukraine has, where they do research on deadly pathogens like botulism and anthrax, seize one of those facilities, weaponize the pathogen, and then blame it on Ukraine and the U.S. because the U.S. has been providing support for some of the research being done in those facilities. But it appears the Ukrainians have gotten most of those pathogens destroyed.
So allegedly, most of those pathogens are destroyed, and there's not maybe as much reason to freak out or be super concerned, but it is concerning, especially since there's, talk about still people figuring out where the jab came. Well, not the jab, but the reason why we need the jab. I'm trying to be careful because I'm streaming on YouTube and they're kind of funny about this stuff. So we don't know certain origins of certain things that we've plagued us for some time, I guess you could say. So we should totally be concerned about what may happen if something gets out. So again, he's saying that a lot of these Ukrainians, they've taken the time and they are destroying a lot of these things, so they won't get in the hands of the Russians. But they are concerned that the Russians will take this stuff, release something, and blame it on the United States and Ukraine. So I'm not certain why Romney is calling Tulsi Gabbard a traitor here after she made her video. She also said in April 2020, in refuting Russia's accusation that the U.S. is using biolabs in Ukraine to develop biological weapons, U.S. Embassy in Ukraine acknowledged there are U.S.-funded labs in Ukraine working with pathogens for vaccine and other peaceful purposes. She has a link there. And CNN fact check, March 10, 2022. There are U.S.-funded biolabs in Ukraine. That much is true. Number 6, furthermore, according to the DoD, there are 2 biolabs in Ukraine that have been under Russian control for some time. Russia illegally took possession of 2 Ukrainian-owned laboratories that BTRP upgraded in 2014 and continues to deny Ukrainian access to these facilities. So, Senator Romney, you have a choice. Out of pride, continue to deny the truth, or admit you are wrong, apologize, and resign. Aloha. And remember that without the truth, we can be neither safe nor free. So, she brought some receipts to the table, and I played you 2 of those videos. So at the very least, we do know that there are biolabs in Ukraine. So I understand from his side of the aisle that he's not too fond of her, but I definitely think calling her traitor was way too far. And Mitt Romney should do better. If only he was that hostile toward Obama when they were having their debates and whatnot. I'm sorry to get sidetracked, but do you recall after the Benghazi incident, and I remember Mitt Romney talking about it, and the media just kind of shut them down. And this might have been like during the debate, and then after they barged in and like said 2 cents, like, oh, people started criticizing Mitt Romney, like, oh, he spoke too quick. It seemed like as Trump said he was a choker, and he just kind of stopped talking about it like he should. I'm like, man, they should have pressed on that continued harder, because they were trying to keep that hush hush, because they didn't want that to be a thing that ended up changing the tide of the election for Mitt Romney in Romney's favor. So when that night, I had to go to work the next morning. I was working at Target at the time. 4 a.m., man. I worked the truck shift, and everyone else there was so happy and stuff, and I was just miserable. And they're like, yeah, Obama won again, Obama won. I'm just like, do you know what happened in Benghazi? And they're like, what's that? And I was just like, oh gosh. And I'm not saying that would have changed the people who work their minds, but it's she shouldn't have relented on that, or reneged, or got quiet. And oh gosh, if only he was that aggressive, I think, on the campaign trail, or as aggressive as he was with Trump, as he was with Obama. You know, there was maybe a zinger here and there, but don't you guys feel like he was, a little more with these other people than he was like actually during his race? And if only he had also been like pushed back on the press and stuff, like how he'll want to push back on Trump and Tulsi or whatever. Because man, they really did like have some weird sort of hit jobs they did on Mitt Romney, like the binders full of women, all kinds of different crap. So Mitt Romney, just take a seat with that. She's obviously correct. Some people are in my comments and on TikTok or whatever calling him a rhino. I don't think it's fair to call him a rhino, because I mean he does still. And like someone replied, and after I said I don't think it's fair to call him a rhino, and they're like, he votes most of the time with the Democrat. I'm like, that's not even true. Like majority of the time he votes in step with them, but there have been some major times when he looked like a tool. when he went the other way, and they're like, oh, Mitt Romney, he has so much integrity. And I'm like, you people are lying, because you would not think that if his integrity pulls him another way. You just want to compliment people when they tick off their side and they come over with you. But, you know, he was Satan, you know, the guy who's going to put black people back in chains when he was running for president. So don't even start. Don't even start. So Mitt Romney, in my opinion, he embarrassed himself by tweeting that out, and he should apologize. Let's see if he will. But again, take everything what you hear about the situation with a grain of salt. Absolutely with a grain of salt. But I just thought I would keep you aware. So moving on to Kyrie Irving. So he is a basketball player who would not get jabbed. And so he played in some games, but he couldn't play in other games where there was like ordinances saying that the players had to be vaccinated. So the other day he showed up to a game and still not vaccinated. He can't play in the game, but he could observe the game and allegedly went over to in the locker rooms and stuff too. I'm not sure about that, but that's what people were saying. And man, none of this stuff is making sense.
Kyrie unable to play this afternoon, and because of the city ordinance,
he's unable to play, but he can walk into the Barclays Center unmasked.
I don't get it either.
And listen, the NBA and the NBPA, you know, have been advised by their medical experts that he can safely participate in home games. And obviously the hope is that he will be able to.
Yes.
At some point, I hope that if nothing changes from that perspective, and this is just the fan in me talking, not the person who's, you know, making these decisions. I hope that Joe would pay the fine and the NBA would let him pay the fine.
So yeah, people recognize that this doesn't make sense. And they just need to change it. Now I am seeing some people like in the comments on Twitter when I just like pulled that video, like he should just get vaccinated. He should just, why should he though? Why are you so pressed about it? Because if you test him, he's probably had it in him or something, some antibodies. Let's assume most people got it by now. Okay. But he's a young, athletic guy. That's not saying that he can't get it and possibly die, but he is like not so much in the danger zone. And if you have the vaccine, you can still catch it and you can still spread it. So why should he have to run out and get it, especially when you know it doesn't make sense? Like, just shut up and get it so he can play. But you know the rules don't make sense. You just want him to comply. Why? Because you did? You bowed down to the mob, so he has to bow down to the mob too? Does it make you feel less like a person, like a man or a woman or whatever? Because someone else got away with what you didn't get away with and you complied, and so now they have to go along with the program. I feel like that's a lot of what this is about. They complied, so you have to comply. Let him win. He's already won on this issue. People see that it's stupid. Even the announcer's like, yeah, it doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense. And he went all this time, and we're like coming out the end of the tunnel. Come on.
It's ridiculous. Like, I don't understand it at all. I mean, it's a few people in our arena that's unvaxxed, right? Like, they lifted all of that in our arena, right? So I don't get it.
It's a second mandate that says he can come in but can't play.
I don't get it. It just feels like at this point now, somebody's trying to make a statement or a point to flex their authority. But, you know, everybody out here looking for attention, and that's what I feel like the mayor wants right now, some attention, you know. But he'll figure it out soon. He better. But it just didn't make any sense. Like, there's unvaxxed people in this building already. We got a guy who can come into the building. I guess, are they fearing our safety? I don't get it. So, yeah, we're all confused. Pretty much everybody in the world is confused at this point. Early on in the season, you know, people didn't understand what was going on, but now it just looks stupid. So hopefully, Eric, you got to figure this out.
So he made a good point. He's like, at first, he's like, everybody was confused. But at this point, everything just looks stupid. So there's a lot of people who are like, science is evolving, we're understanding it as it goes along, etc. But now it's like, you know what? This doesn't entirely make a lot of sense to me. So, just let the man play. You just want to win. You want to be right, or do you want to win? Because at this point, you're wrong. And he's gone all this time. So what makes you think he's gonna bow now? Kudos. I didn't know that he would last this long. We talked about it some time ago, as this was really, really being talked about. But now enough time has passed and people are like, yeah, this is stupid, especially since he can go inside the building and people can go in and be around with no mask, etc. But he just can't play. He just can't play. Okay. Lastly, I want to talk about Kim Foxx and Jussie Smollett. So, of course, Jussie Smollett is the actor from the show Empire who faked a hate crime, and he got sentenced to paying a fine, and he had to pay the restitutions. And restitution, I think restitution was $125,000. I think the fine was the max at $25,000, and he has to spend 150 days of jail, and he has to do probation. He can live wherever he wants, but he can do call-in and whatever for his check-ins and whatnot. But he does have to spend 150 days in jail, and she thinks that's too much. She thinks that's like a miscarriage of justice, which is really ridiculous. She was a state attorney at first, and who's supposed to be covering stuff, and she was contacting his sister as like the stuff started to go down. And that's one of the reasons why they had to pick someone else. But there were like 16 charges and then they dropped them. She dropped them. So people saw that was pretty messed up. So I'm going to read this article, a little bit of it from the New York Post reporting. So Kim Foxx calls Jussie Smollett prosecution failure of justice system. Chicago's top prosecutor who originally let Jussie Smollett excuse me for a minute, I gotta take a water. I was going to try to power through that, but I couldn't, y'all. I'm sorry. So anyway, Kim Foxx and Jussie Smollett. So Chicago's top prosecutor who originally let Jussie Smollett skate on 16 felony charges for lying to the police called the prosecution of the disgraced actor a failure of the justice system and said he was a victim of mob justice. Kim Foxx made the remarks in a Thursday night column in the Chicago Sun-Times published shortly after Smollett, 39, was sentenced to 5 months in jail for staging a hate crime against himself in a bid to raise his public profile. Just because we do not like the outcome should not mean we bully prosecutors to circumvent the judicial process to get it changed. Smollett was indicted, tried, and convicted by a kangaroo prosecution in a matter of months, Fox wrote in the piece. Meanwhile, the families of more than 50 Black women murdered in Chicago over the last 20 years await justice. Okay. This was a very high-profile case with a lot of evidence. He did it for attention. Guess what? You got attention. You got attention. Now, the investigation led to some pretty hilarious facts, but it was always dumb, and no one should have believed the story. Someone had pointed out, which I did think about this before, but I had forgotten this point, but they're like, because he framed like MAGA white guys, right? It's like, oh, I got jumped going to Subway in the middle of the night. They're like, this is MAGA country, and then beat him up and tried to lynch him and throw like, he had like a cord around his neck or something, and they threw like bleach on him or some kind of substance. And Matt Walsh made the point like, so if no one if no one had uncovered this was a hate hoax, were you just going to blame or try to find some poor white sucker to go down for this? Or just be like, oh, that white person who attacked Jussie is somewhere out there in the world. Like, what was the goal here? Like, you're throwing somebody under the bus. Like, I don't know how deeply he thought about it, but they did that. He did that. And so many people went along with it because they were trying to frame like America. And they're like, this is just Trump's America. This is what happens in Trump's America. And they just wanted to believe it so badly. But the point was, as someone pointed out, like, why would all these racist, homophobic Trump supporters know who the heck he was? Why would they know that? You think they just spend their weekends or weekdays or weeknights or whatever day Empire was on watching the TV show? Now, I knew who he was a little bit. I know his real name. Like, I knew he was, I could probably recognize him from being on that show. I didn't watch Empire, and I wouldn't watch that show. But I, for some reason, do know alarmingly a lot about TV shows I don't watch. So I would recognize him, but I don't suspect that the average person, Trump supporter who they think is racist and homophobic, probably would not watch that show. So if someone who would call him out and attack him for being a gay person on Empire probably wouldn't even recognize him to even attack him. So be like, this is MAGA country, and then beat him up because he's black and gay and on that show. That's, of course, was ridiculous. So that's ridiculous on top of, you're in Chicago, that is not MAGA country. Like, that piece alone should have been like, you know what, that is suspicious. Plus, who goes to Subway that late? I didn't even know you could go to Subway that late. And it was super cold. There was a polar vortex. It didn't make any sense. And then when they got the story out and the police were like, okay, let's see your phone. And so he was like, no, I don't want to do that. Like, okay, that's suspicious. That's suspicious. Okay. So anyway, they wasted a lot of time for the police. They wasted resources. He thought he could pull some strings. His sister could pull some strings. Again, his sister was contacting Fox like 8 different times, I think, at least, as things started to heat up and look like her brother had shift from a victim to a suspect. But of course, they weren't white guys in MAGA hats. It was these big, buff, black dudes, dark actually, who attacked Jussie, who he paid to have attacked them. And not only did he pay them with a check. He didn't do it cash. He didn't do Bitcoin. He didn't do some kind of ciphering on the dark web or something to do some kind of deposit. No, he wrote them a check. And he also staged a practice run. So this wasn't even like you called somebody and it just started like avalanching or like one bad idea after another. It was plotted out. So this is not a criminal mastermind, but there was a plan. There was a plan in motion. So for Kim Foxx to be like, there's people waiting for people who are murdered to be convicted. Yeah, and your dumb butt, your liberal butt, and all these prosecutors and whatnot who wants to get them off, probably have them back on the streets anytime soon. So you're just distracting. You're just distracting from your buddy. Shortly after grand jury returned 16-count indictment against Smollett in 2019, Fox made the decision to quietly drop all charges against him after he agreed to forfeit his $10,000 bond and complete some community service hours. The state attorney was widely lambasted for the move in a series of other ethical blunders she made while handling the case. Fox continued to speak with Smollett's sister after he was a target of a criminal probe, deliberately misled the public in her colloquial recusal, where she continued to be actively involved in the case and never filed to appoint a special prosecutor as is required by law. So I don't even know why she'd write this piece. She just continues to look like a corrupt fool. And I don't know. I know some of these people want to stand by their friends, but he did a very bad thing. He did a very dumb thing. And the evidence was just there. It was and I know there's a lot of bleeding heart people like, oh my gosh, it was so awful. It just never made sense at all in the least, but everyone should have been suspicious. Someone told me that they lived in Chicago and they remember listening to the radio and people were just hot and so upset about it when it first happened. So I can imagine people were probably livid when they found out that he lied to everybody. And the policeman watching press conferences and them trashing Jussie. And then even the judge, like, he could have chosen to not give him any sort of jail time. And in lying to the police cases like this, there's not a lot of people maybe who do serve time for that, but he never took accountability for his actions. And the judge was like, your name is like synonymous with a liar. Like, you're a joke. There's like probably nothing that can actually do that is actually worse than what you've done to yourself. But I'm going to send you to jail and make you pay a fine anyway, which I think is the right thing. Some people said he should have went longer, and why not? Lynching is a federal crime, so he's got a little more time for the hate crime now. He could have got a little bit more time for the hate crime. But what she said, it happened so fast. Like, should something like that happen take longer? We're in 20. He just got sentenced. I even thought the time from when the conviction was like, you're guilty, to last week when they're like, oh, you got to go to jail for 150 days. That even seemed like a while to me. But like, if all this stuff went down 2019 and we're in 2022, how long do you think these things should take? Or is she just saying, like, you should just throw your hands up and you shouldn't have been prosecuted at all? And I guess that's what she wants, because that's what she did when he surrendered his bond or whatever, $10,000, and she decided to drop stuff and do community service. I do not think that he is being punished as a, hey, for all of you out there who want to trick everybody next time, remember Jussie Smollett. I don't think that's why this was done. I don't think he was, the strung up person on the cross to have be a warning, like his head on the pike. I don't think that's what this is. He could have got it for much longer if that's what this was. But he is totally without remorse for what he did. And it was a lot bigger than him just wanting to get attention and a check or whatnot. He could have just got another role if Empire wasn't doing him right or whatever. He's an actor. He could just find another job. He could sing. He could go, do whatever. He had a bright future maybe ahead of him. I don't know. Maybe, allegedly, hypothetically, I guess. And then he just looks like a giant clown. And his name and his family is associated with clownish behavior. That's not fair to his family. But they're all going along with it, so you all deserve each other. But the reason why it got so much play and why people like Kamala and Biden and so many other politicians jumped onto this, late night hosts, celebrities, or what, it wasn't just in solidarity with him. It was to complete the further narrative and to drive that this is just America. It's racist. It's terrible. And it's particularly terrible because it's Donald Trump's America. As Ellen Page said when she was on, maybe it was Colbert Show or something, but it was a late night show. And it's like, oh, this is just what happens, when there's Pence and Trump in the office. And it wasn't true. So whatever fantasy you have about Trump's America, it's not true. Actually, someone did say it is true, because in Trump's America, you have to fake hate crimes. And this is what happened. But if you were so quick to believe this, you have to ask yourself why. Why were you such a gullible fool? And I know I'm not nice in the least about this particular topic, but I do really feel like people were foolish. Genuinely foolish. Oh my gosh, I could talk about this particular topic forever and break it down again, but we've talked about it before, and I just wanted to point out Kim Foxx and her banananess about it. And she really should have hid in a cave and not brought this up. And she had the goal enough to do it. It is what it is. Thank you guys for joining me today. I want to encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com, check out different content that I have on the website. If you do enjoy what I do here, consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate. Check out different articles that I have on the website. Please check out different videos. If you haven't seen the Get Low video, it is very funny. I would check it out. Please make sure that you guys do check out different merch that I have, like the goat hoodie that I am wearing right now. The I Am Not the Victim You're Looking For shirt is really cool. I also have, well, it's not quite pumpkin spices anymore, but these little Trump chibis are cute and I drew them. My Money, My Business with that shirt as well. March, it's still March, yeah, it's reading month. I do have children's books, chapter books you guys can get free kiddos if you're looking for something with some good conservative values. I'm grateful to those who did purchase them and said that their kids really enjoyed it. I did have a book that I came out with recently called Anubis, Princess of the Damned, and I got a nice 5-star review the other day from someone I know watches the show, because I didn't recognize their name on some of the comments. But I'll just go ahead and read it because I feel good about it. Randall was unlucky in love and unlucky in life, but maybe that will change in death. This book was fast and fun. Read from start to finish, written from Randall's point of view. The story draws you into the life and he falls for his beautiful new neighbor. Christina Elbar has created an imaginative world for a character-driven narrative. How her writing is amusing and brings to life a lovesick young gamer with just enough depth to make it seem realistic and plausible. Fans of vampire romances will not be disappointed. So thank you very much. Appreciate that. So if you guys are interested in any of my books, you guys can find them at my website, ninjadoespublishing.com. But if you do go to blacktnews.com and hit the merchandise, there is a banner that will take you there. So everything you want to find is actually at blacktnews.com. And I thank you guys for being supportive. I do really enjoy writing. And I am also working on some political books as well. So keep out on the lookout for that stuff. Thank you guys for joining me today. And I will see you tomorrow. I'm so glad I had this water today. I had that coughing fit. Oh my gosh. I'm so glad I had water. I got to remember to always keep it with me. God bless and I'll see you.